Since the beginning of time, man has been at war, a man-made war, resulting only in the loss of man. Or did it? In the midst of war, one only remembers the number of allies fallen and the number of comrades lost. But no one remembers the tools lost to war, because why would you? What if we could remove man from war? What if we could save ourselves the trouble of losing friends, loved ones? We are entering into an age of technology where we could do just that. Hello, my name is Michael Rorda, and I'll be talking to you today about the advancement in AI and why it should be embraced. Soon after World War II, scientists began to question themselves. What if robots could think? And thus, the creation of the first AI, the logic theorist, in 1955, which went on to prove the first 38 of the 52 Whitehead and Russell's Principia of Mathematica. What exactly is an AI? AI is a branch of computer science dealing with the simulation of intelligent behavior in computers. This can be broken down into two categories: simple and general. Simple AI is an AI that can only focus on one task at a time, while general can do any intellectual task a human being can. This makes it extraordinarily impressive in marketing, military, and even research. You all know Amazon, an online shopping company that exploded in 2012. But why did it explode? Amazon enlisted the help of an AI named Eva. Eva uses a process called collaborative filtering, which, say you wanted to buy a computer, Eva would look at other users who looked at the same computer and then would recommend to you things that the other users also would have bought. This made the website and the platform significantly more user-friendly and giving them better to-the-person recommendations. However, this isn't the only way that Amazon uses AI. Kiva Systems, more commonly known as Amazon Robotics, is developing a robot which, while a traditional warehouse requires user-operated forklifts, these robots can receive commands and then autonomously traverse through the warehouse using a system of computer-generated barcodes found on the floor to travel to the product, and then using a lift on the top, get underneath, pick them up, and bring them to its destination. By removing the need for human beings to deliver packages from one place to another, this prevents the possibility of injury in the workplace, and it greatly increases productivity. Amazon, however, is not the only business to use this AI. Starbucks uses an AI called Deep Brew. Deep Brew is an AI that is designed to be able to keep track of stock, and using the same collaborative filtering technique, it is able to create customized menus for different communities that the shop is located on, based off of other similar communities. However, Starbucks also uses this AI to help locate new locations. This is a Starbucks coffee shop in Lake Buena Vista. In a study done by Insider, partnered by Swarm, this shop was considered to be the most profitable Starbucks coffee place in all of 2020 in Florida. And as you guessed it, this coffee shop location was chosen by AI. In a study done by Harvard Business Review, over 50% that questioned over 250 CEOs of AI-involved businesses, they determined that over 50% of businesses say that it enhances the features and functions of their business, and over 30% say that it optimized internal business products, helped free up workers, make better decisions, create new products, and even help in marketing and sales. In the past year alone, there has been a 300% increase of investment in AI technology, and over 20% of total workers use AI to help make decisions. However, business isn't the only place where AI is used. 75 years ago, the world was at war. The biggest war mankind has ever recorded. The war is said to be the end of all wars. I'm talking about World War II. In World War II, there was a casualty list of over 50 million people, a total of 4% of the population at the time. A huge cause of this was actually friendly fire at 14%, or 7 million casualties. According to studies, man is only proven to be 85% accurate in war, while AI, on the other hand, can be up to 95% accurate. This 10% difference can mean saving countless lives in battlefield. This accuracy, however, is not just in where your weapon is pointed, but it's also in the decisions you make and the strategies that you choose. Last year, a Heron AI pilot went in a simulated dogfight with a US Air Force pilot and ended up shooting down the US Air Force pilot. We've gotten to a time where AI is able to outperform people in almost all of its tasks. And in the near future, we could be looking at completely removing people from war. One question that many people ask, though, is it ethical? This is an interview. The video I'm about to show you is an interview of Mark T. Esper, the former Secretary of Defense of the United States.
One topic on everyone's mind at the symposium and AI in general is around ethics and policy and regulation and all the other pieces. And you made a fantastic point, right? This idea of applying and using the government's role the right way to create this, as you said, the captivity versus free. How do you open things up so commercial industry can flourish, research can happen, things like that, but within the bounds of what we as a society want to see and the principles and values that we like and cherish. So what thoughts do you have on that and the work that you've done, which you've been very active in this? So I think the audience would love to hear that.
Well, I think, first off, it's sort of important to think of what the global landscape looks like. It's very clear we have an adversary in the CCP that is twisting this technology in a way that is violently unaligned with the way the United States and the West views technological innovation.
Right.
AI is being used by the CCP to sort of track ethnic minorities, to suppress freedom of speech, to do all sorts of things that we definitely do not want artificial intelligence to be used for. So in that context, I think it becomes more imperative than ever to ensure that the U.S. leads with a set of principles around AI which are rooted in our American values.
In this video, he makes two great points: that the development of AI is inevitable, and that we need to lead this charge of AI into the future. So how does this tie in, though, with the Bible? God loves it when we create. God himself created all things. Jesus was a carpenter. In Exodus 31, God appointed Beelzebub and Olabab to build the temple, which would be used in the majority of the Old Testament. God gave these two men unrivaled creativity and skill in order to build the temple. However, God does not like it when we use our creations for our own benefit, as proven in the Tower of Babel. where God scrambled the language of the people and sent them all over the world because they tried to become God with their creations. Many people believe that by developing AI, people are trying to play God. However, if we can create an AI that is rooted in good principles, good Christian principles, biblical principles, if we can create an AI that is built to create instead of destroy, that is built to protect instead of to attack, I feel that AI will lead us into the future, not only just with technology, but in everything. Thank you.
Abundant fishery species of the Apalachicola Bay have been decimated due to droughts, deathly oil spills, hurricanes, and extreme lack of fresh water use from upstream rivers in Georgia. Good afternoon. My name is Don Thompson, and I'm honored to have Dr. Sandra Brook, marine scientist at the FSU Coastal and Marine Laboratory and principal investigator of the Apalachicola System Initiative. Today, I would like to inform all of you about the substantial damage done to a valuable Northwest Florida ecosystem and its related economy. First, I would like to give a quick background of where exactly the fresh water that reaches the bay comes from. The water from one of the sources first originates in the Appalachian Mountains in North Georgia, eventually forming the Chattahoochee River. This river also runs parallel with a secondary source, known as the Flint River, which emerges in Clayton County of Georgia. Together moving southward, the two rivers join together right as they enter Florida to make Lake Seminole. As the water from the lake flows further downstream, it forms into the Chattahoochee River. And as the water from the river flows further downstream, it finally enters into the Apalachicola Bay. Now, because both the Chattahoochee and Flint rivers originate in Georgia's northern regions, Georgia gets first access to the water, using it for agricultural, industrial, and household purposes. As I mentioned before, many past and recurring threats to the Apalachicola Basin have decimated the bay's ecosystem and its related economy. Threats such as droughts like the one in 2012 that impacted much of the southeast, hurricanes like Hurricane Michael in 2018, deathly oil spills like the BP oil spill in 2010, and the continual reduction of freshwater flow from important rivers have all played a part in disrupting the delicate balance of nature in the bay. While the BP oil spill never reached the bay, the initial response to the incident was to close all sections of the bay for oyster harvesting. Worried their livelihoods would disappear when the bay was at stake, oystermen panicked and harvested every oyster they could find. Now, while acts of nature like hurricanes and droughts are not in control and cannot be prevented, and oil spills are mostly complete random and unintentional incidents, people's reactions to these events could have been different. Freshwater flow to the Apalachicola Bay is down by 30 to 40%. Oysters, blue crab, and pink shrimp populations have suffered declines due to these drastic changes. Here are the number of landings for the oysters, blue crab, and pink shrimp populations in 2000. Now, landings are recordings or the total number of weight of a species brought to land in a certain time period. For this presentation, the number of landings will stand for the weight of a certain species in pounds. Now, after observing the number of landings for these species in 2000, take a look at the number of landings for these same species in 2013. As you can see, the number of landings has dropped tremendously, with oysters having a 54% decrease, blue crab a 76% decrease, and pink shrimp a 47% decrease in just 3 years. Now, while blue crab and pink shrimp populations have been gradually returning to normal, the same cannot be said for the oyster population. For the past 8 years, the oysters in the bay have dropped to historic lows, going from just over 3 million landings in 2012 before the drought period to 21,000 landings in 2020. That's a 99% decrease. The oysters in this ecosystem are Apalachicola Bay's prime economic treasure. Not only are they a rare delicacy, says Mr. Shannon Hartsfield, president of the local Seafood Workers Association, but oysters also play an important part in filtering Apalachicola Bay's water. For decades, scientists have labeled the Apalachicola Bay as a pristine estuary, and here's why. Oysters are filter feeders, meaning that they actually filter water when they eat. And the way they do this is really unique. When an oyster wants to eat, it slightly opens its shell, and there are these tiny hair-like structures on the gills of the oyster called cilia that move around in a way that actually draws in water, along with plankton, algae, bacteria, and other small particles that may get sucked into the oyster for its meal. That's incredible. Imagine being in that kind of a world where every time you eat, the world gets less polluted. How amazing would that be? I say all this because I want to highlight the importance of oysters to the bay. A single adult oyster is capable of filtering up to 50 gallons of water in just one day. And to put that into perspective, this is a 500 milliliter water bottle. 378 of these make 50 gallons of water. That's how much an oyster can filter in just one day. Here's an image displaying two tanks. The one on the left is filled with dirty, algae-packed water. When oysters are added, they consume the algae and other small particles in just a few hours. These creatures are crucial to the bay's health. Droughts, hurricanes, and lack of fresh water flow have caused the salinity levels in the bay to increase. Oysters in particular require a specific ratio of freshwater and saltwater to thrive. With very little filtration from the once populated oyster beds, there are fewer, less healthy oysters each year. That's why the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has temporarily suspended oyster harvesting in the bay until December 31st, 2025. Listen to Mr. Shannon Hartsfield as he discusses the closure.
It's just a struggling industry. It's a struggling situation. The last 2 years, we've been having some pretty decent flows of fresh water. So we've been seeing life in areas of the bay that we hadn't seen in a long time, which is terrific. But with that said, we don't know how long we're going to receive these fresh waters we're receiving. We don't know. I mean, we've been having a couple wet years, so we don't. As soon as we start going through that dry year again, they're going to be holding it all back again, and farmers are going to be working them crops, and and in Atlanta and hydropower and all that's going to get their water. So pretty much Georgia's going to stay nice and happy and sassy. Thing is, it's a mandatory reopen in 5 years. So no matter what the bay, what happens, what gets rebuilt, they're going to be opening it back up in 5 years. But it's in there where a certain portion of the bay hits a 300 bushel per acre mark, it could reopen. And I believe that we'll see that in 2 to 2.5 years. I mean, if it doesn't get opened back up in 2 to 2.5 years, it's not going to matter what it is opened back. It's not going to be much of a production of oysters.
The change in flow of the fresh water to the Apalachicola Bay is partly the result of decisions made by Georgia authorities. Since 2000, Metro Atlanta's population has increased by more than 1.5 million. This substantial increase of Georgia's population has in turn forced Georgia to take more water from the Chattahoochee and Flint rivers. Oysters certainly aren't more important than people when it comes to distribution of water, but the collapse of an industry's needs deeply impacts a community, creating hardships and poverty for families until new skills and jobs are developed. The declining oyster population has made a devastating impact on local and state economies. Once, there were more than 300 working oyster boats that would go out daily to harvest oysters. Each would come back with 20 60-pound bags of oysters, and after the basin's devastating drought, only a dozen boats would go out and return with just 2 bags of oysters. According to a Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation report, an estimated dollar value of oyster landings in 2012 was nearly $9 million. The estimated dollar value of last year's yield was only $145,000. Late in 2012, Florida's Governor Rick Scott declared a total collapse of Apalachicola's fishery. This collapse has jeopardized the livelihood of many Florida oystermen and has also negatively affected the whole seafood industry. Joseph Smokey Parrish, who is a commissioner in Franklin County, indicates that thousands of fishery jobs have been impacted. And he says it may not mean much to some people, but what's at stake is our history and our way of life. As I mentioned before, acts of nature like hurricanes and droughts cannot be prevented. However, some of the harm to Apalachicola Bay has happened as a result of decisions made by people. Florida and Georgia have been fighting over the flow of fresh water from the Chattahoochee and Flint rivers for over 3 decades now. Each blames the other for the damage to the bay's ecosystem. Georgia blames Florida for the decimated oyster population because Florida allowed overharvesting in the years following the BP oil spill. That may be true, but it doesn't explain why the existing oysters in the bay are unhealthy. Florida argues that Georgia should develop and enforce stronger water conservation efforts for densely populated Atlanta and the surrounding areas. Water consumption by Southwest Georgia farmers is also an important consideration. Georgia's Environmental Protection Division should issue water draw permits to entities such as cities and counties, industrial businesses, and farmers that each use more than 100,000 gallons of water each day. Many of the permit holders are agricultural farmers that are not required to report how much water they use. Without meters in place to measure the farmer's use, no one has a complete understanding of how much water is being pulled from the two rivers. Both Florida and Georgia agree that more data is needed. For example, scientists need a better understanding of the relationship between groundwater and surface water systems. Information is needed to determine how much fresh water is needed to restore the bay. For many years, both states have participated in water resource discussions, leading to awareness about stewardship. Florida's recent decision to close the Apalachicola Bay is a good example of stewardship. The closure will allow time for oysters to reproduce and grow, which is necessary for the bay's recovery. The concept of stewardship began at the time of creation, when God called Adam and Eve to be stewards of the earth and all of the living things. Genesis 2:15 says, "The Lord God took man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it." The definition of a steward is the one who takes care of the master's business until he returns. God the master provides for all living creatures, and he made us partners in the management of Earth's resources and the care of all the species that make this planet their home. Faithful stewardship involves an understanding what resources require management, identifying what constitutes good care of the resources, and putting the right practices into action. For example, water is essential for all life, so its supply is limited, and we should avoid wasting it and work to keep it clean. God also calls us to love our neighbors, so distributing water accordingly to a region's needs when possible is an act of love that honors God. In closing, the solution to the Apalachicola Bay water crisis is not the responsibility of just Georgia or Florida. Both parties must act to remedy their contributions to the problem. Both would benefit from researching, developing, and improving upon water conservation efforts. Florida has made a first step towards restoring the bay by suspending the oyster harvesting, but lawmakers and local authorities must work to protect oyster populations in the future. Should freshwater flow from Georgia turn to normal levels, complete restoration would be possible in time. Jobs and businesses specific to the oyster industry would return. Important lessons would be learned and taught to future generations. And when occasional natural disasters strike, the bay will be prepared and be able to recover more quickly with the help of responsible stewardship. Thank you.